Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. Time to get going once again. And unfortunately, a slight increase in the number of things I have not yet been able to tell you about, but feel like you must absolutely hear something about. From 10 to now 12 million, I'm going to guess, just by way of estimate. In terms of, I don't know. Well, lots of stories to catch up on. There's courtroom drama. We haven't reached a conclusion in the next stage of most of these cases. They're right in the middle of all sorts of procedural wrangling. But the law professors are following along. I'm concerned about, the outcome. I'm concerned about what kind of story it makes trying to jump in the middle. But I guess we can summarize everything for you in an unsurprising way, probably some way you've already guessed. Maybe you've picked up hints on social media about this as well. But essentially, the two trial courtrooms, district court level courtrooms where this activity continues before Judge Boasberg, before Judge, I got a pronunciation tip on the judge in Maryland, Sinis. It's, Xinis, and we've been saying Zinnis, maybe. I think even Chris Van Hollen. I mean, we could be forgiven, I think. I'll forgive Van Hollen, and he'll forgive me for mispronouncing it. But I got a tip yesterday during the show, and if I had been smart about it, I would have marked who sent it, and I'm visualizing it in my head, and it's somewhere in my feed, and golly, Anyway, right in the middle, I got a great tip. Thank you very much for telling us that it's pronounced like C, S-E-A, knees, K-N-E-E-S, C knees. Like I got to get my C knees right underneath me. Anyway, the tip, I guess if I keep scrolling long enough, I might be able to turn it up again. And but I don't know. I'm a little worried that it's not going to work and it's not going to be I'm not going to find it correctly. It was buried under reaction to the Kristi Noem story, which, among the least important stories, I think, from yesterday, but certainly one of the most entertaining. I think it was the least important story. I mean, just thinking back over it, the fact that she had her bag stolen and that for a while out there in the wild was the Department of Homeland Security Secretary's access card for, I guess, for the building. But who knows what else that might unlock access to. Not to mention, of course, the question of $3,000 in cash sort of seemed like a little much. And social media was aflame with trying to criminalize it or justify it, depending, and not always depending on ideology, but lots of people pointing out, people of a certain age love paying for stuff in cash still. And I don't know, she's from, South Dakota? Is that right? I mean, they have credit cards. It's a big credit card state, as I recall, now that I think about it. Anyway, no really good reason these days, but apparently she was saying she had her whole family in town for Easter and wanted to take everyone out for dinner, and so had made a large cash withdrawal and was just generally planning on dropping cash all around town with this big family, not including the dogs, I guess, for the weekend. Okay, I mean, I guess, maybe, although really, honestly, when I'm like, I have some large expenditures I'm going to have to make, or take people out to dinner around town, even a large group, to me, that's when the credit card steps in. I don't know how much cash I'm going to need. It's a big pain in the neck to try and find it all. It was just odd. I guess there's nothing terrible about it, except, of course, for the fact that one of the items of, I guess, that was alleged to be evidence against Kilmar Abrego Garcia in determining, as the government tried to do, that he was not only an illegal migrant, which he was not, and a member of MS-13, which, there's no real clear indication still that that's the case. But they were saying, well, he had like $1,100 in cash. I don't know if it was on him or it was in his house or what. And who has that but, drug lords, kingpins, gang members, etc. And now, of course, Kristi Noem carrying $3,000 around. Yes. Okay. I visualized it correctly. It was Mike Musson who gave us the pronunciation of Judge Seeney's. So I appreciate that. That makes some sense. Thinking about, is it Greek? I guess. I don't know. Anyway, they're having difficulty getting people to follow the rules in their courtrooms. That's where I really was meaning to go. This morning, I didn't put it aside, but I guess I can go and look for it. But Steve Vladeck has been commenting on. Basically, there's like fundamental disagreement between the government lawyers and everybody else involved in the case. The judge, that's usually not good for you. The plaintiff parties who are now, I guess, driving the litigation. It's and it's to the point where I'll go find Steve Vladeck's, I guess. Man, there's a lot of things going on. Steve Vladeck's feed to tell you about it. I was originally thinking, well, let's hold off, but he'll summarize things pretty quickly, I think, and give us a sense, and we'll take an expert sense of what's going on. He asks rhetorically, how are things going with respect to the discovery before Judge Seeney's, yes, in Abrego Garcia? That's how shorthand for the case now, not just the man's name. Well, the government, this one, ours allegedly, describes as a, quote, false premise that it, quote, has been ordered to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release. Even though, as he points out parenthetically, that's literally what the SCOTUS held. Supreme Court said, you've got to facilitate you. Not only that, they ordered Judge Seeney's to order the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release. And they are referring in their pleadings to this charge that has been given them as a false premise. No, you didn't. So this may take some time to work out as between the parties. Let's see. Vladeck actually then posts very recently that somehow this has gotten worse, grabbing the Blue Sky post of Gabriel Malor, who writes, who is I feel like we've seen his name before. Oklahoman in Virginia, appellate attorney. Okay, well, that explains the interest in following this, but maybe not. Anyway, I'm utterly baffled, he says, by the highlighted part. There's a screen grab here, which isn't even a quote from the Supreme Court's order. What are they doing? And yeah, that's interesting too. Defendants, that's the government, response to interrogatory number 1. The answer here is defendants object to interrogatory number 1 as based on the false premise, just like Vladeck was saying, that the United States can or has been ordered to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. And they refer as authority to the earlier Abrego Garcia case proceedings before the Supreme Court, which they note as holding that defendants should, quote, take all available steps to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States. So that is interesting. And emphasis added. Defendants further object interrogatory number 1 as calling for information that is protected by the attorney-client privilege, the deliberative process, the state secrets privilege, and the governmental privilege. Defendants incorporate their objections to definitions and objections to instructions. Okay, so they're saying, well, the quote that they grab here, they are enclosing in quotes something that I guess did not actually appear in that form in the Supreme Court brief or opinion. So, where did it come from? Is it similar? I don't know. Take all available steps to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States. Oh, and by the way, they wrote United State. They left out the last S, but okay. Embarrassing, but whatever. So, I mean, are they trying to parse the difference between take all available steps to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States and take all available steps to facilitate the release from custody of Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador? I don't know. But you can see they're clearly intent on dragging this out for as long as possible, and it's just a question of when the court will lose patience with them. Gabriel was responding to Walter Olson having written on Joshua Friedman's observation of what was going on. Joshua writing that the Trump administration is stonewalling plaintiffs' discovery requests in the Abrego Garcia case. Their attorneys tell Judge Sines, there's a copy of the letter, the highlighted bits of which say that the government's document production consists entirely of public filings from the dockets, copies of plaintiffs' own discovery requests and correspondence, and 2 non-substantive cover emails transmitting declarations filed in this case. Essentially, they're just not complying with discovery requests. The discovery responses defendants served this afternoon established that the government intends to prevent plaintiffs from developing the discovery ordered by this court. So they're looking for contempt, and I did see somebody basically summarize what was going on as sort of being a contempt within a contempt. The government was stonewalling and failing to produce documents in discovery. The discovery meant to reveal the process by which decisions were made to send Abrego Garcia, 1, to arrest him in the first place, 2, to exfiltrate him from the United States, 3, to claim that he's a gang member and then imprison him in El Salvador, in an effort to cover up the way those decisions were made because they likely were illegal and unconstitutional. They are now refusing to comply with disclosure and discovery orders. So they'll be in contempt of the discovery order in an effort to cover up the fact that they were, A, acting illegally, and then B, covering up their own contempt in the first round of proceedings when they were originally asked, what are you doing and why? And now that they're being asked the second time, they'll be in contempt again. A contempt within a contempt. It's an interesting concept. You should be worried that your government is tied up in this sort of nonsense. All right, there are a million other things going on, not all of which are going on in court, but I'm sure we'll find ourselves back in the courtroom setting shortly as things begin to develop and as people are watching this morning's proceedings and getting upset about it and posting about it. How about if I spend some time telling you some other reasons why Elon Musk is a terrible, terrible person and should have nothing whatsoever to do with the running and functioning of our government, which, I guess if you enclose functioning in quotes, it still works. He's a bad guy. You don't want him anywhere near anything. There are so many things happening. Let's see if we can run through them. I mentioned yesterday that, there were like 2 things that were top of the list for what was wrong with Elon Musk, and I'm trying to remember exactly which one I shared with you yesterday. And is it this one? I'm looking back. Oh, yes, right. That he was going to try to engineer a contract for SpaceX to be a big provider, if not the chief designer and lead engineers on this Trump's purported Golden Dome project, a missile defense system. Even though I don't think they have any expertise in missile defense. Certainly they're barely, they're having some success in getting some rockets in the air. They'd be great at defending us against their own rockets. They explode on their own, and maybe that's what gave him the idea that he could do this. But 1, he was going to steer a massive federal government contract into his own pockets. 2, he really didn't have the expertise to deliver it. And then 3, the most absurd idea I had ever heard in my life, which was that it wasn't even going to be built under contract and sold to the United States military. It was instead going to be, I guess, I don't know how the arrangements for the build were going to be, but they were going to sell it to the to the military on a subscription basis, which was just insane. I mean, I've never heard of anything like that before. I mean, I guess there might be some other thing that the Department of Defense buys that way that's like non-mission critical, but like imagine renting the Navy, right? You know, we need to project military power into the Red Sea to deal with the Houthis. Well, you know, put a coin in the slot if you want to take this aircraft carrier. Like, what are you talking about? So a subscription service, which from Elon Musk is particularly egregious because, of course, he's got the history of turning off Starlink at critical moments on the battlefield for the Ukrainians when he wanted the Russians to win, things like that. And anyway, I don't know what to tell you. The guy is just out of his mind. And the thing, although I guess some of the creative ways he comes up with to steal money are kind of interesting. Some of them less creative, like I demand that the board give me $50 billion. Well, no. Well, I think I want you to do that anyway. And he manages to actually engineer that. That seems a little bit like genius. I'd like to be able to do that. But there's another story in pocket that has to do solely with his private businesses. And in this case, it is Tesla, which he continues to wreck. The stock continues to slide. I have two things to tell you about why Elon Musk is terrible that both relate to Tesla. And one of them is going to be harder to find because it's further back. But I guess I want to get the details of this one. Well, I'd like to get them correct. So why don't I overpromise on this one and give you the long story short from memory and then roll it back with facts later on. But Tesla, it turns out, one of the great dangers of its software-based nature as a car, it's so weird and futuristic in that respect that some people have described Tesla ownership as, well, certainly as a lot less like owning and operating a car in the traditional sense than, I guess a little bit like he proposes Golden Dome ought to be, like you're sort of subscribing to a service of using a vehicle. And it can be remotely controlled. It can be driven by remote control, but lots of features can be changed because so much of the car is driven by software and there's this integrated network. People have long said, and I've never read an article that established this clearly, but I've never been looking for it, but I've always heard in passing that Tesla can, I don't know, I guess if there's like non-payment on the car or something, turn the damn thing off. Brick it so you can't use it. The point is everything runs on the software, and Elon Musk and Tesla as a corporation retain access to the software that makes your car work. And that's a commentary on him, commentary on the ownership relationship, commentary on the Internet of Things and the dumbness of turning over your control of every smart item you have. It turns out to have been a dumb purchase. The item's smart for the company, though, that they can manipulate things well after the relationship in the traditional sense is thought to be over. I have purchased this car. It's nice that you made it. I paid you plenty for it. I'm carrying around the advertisement for it, glued onto the back of the car. It's got your logo, but that's the end of our relationship besides you servicing me under warranty. I'm not obligated to you in any sense. I'm not working for you, and the car belongs to me. I'm not licensing it from you. Well, anyway, speaking of that and warranties, etc., The Street has this first of the two articles I wanted to share with you. Let's get right on to it. What is The Street? I don't know. Is it Wall Street or is it the street on which we drive cars? I don't know which kind of publication it actually is. You can go find out, thestreet.com, although it does say automotive industry car news. Oh, my guess is that it's maybe more economic news, Wall Street oriented. But this, Tesla accused of using sneaky tactic to dodge car repairs. Oh, so stealing money. Okay, That's understandable. Sneaky tactic. What do you mean sneaky tactic? Get a load of this one. The automotive company, the subheader does not reveal anything. The automotive company has another major problem on its hands. This is an April 12th article by one Patricia Battle, who writes that Tesla has been embroiled in controversy over the past few months. Thank you. Since Tesla's CEO Elon Musk joined the Trump administration in January, heading the, I would say then, so-called Department of Government Efficiency, many consumers have turned against the automaker due to Musk's recent efforts to shrink the government. They've been that and the illegality of it, plus, of course, the brazen and egocentric nature of it. Anyway, this controversy may have affected Tesla's sales over the past few months. Thank you. It's easy to understand. Good background. According to a recent report from Cox Automotive, Tesla's U.S. sales declined by almost 9% year over year during the first quarter of 2025. That's the sort of thing that'll get you in trouble with your board. Occasionally, if they're not the kind of board that, gives you $50 billion. Amid the shrinkage in sales, Tesla faces another significant problem. Are you ready for this one? The electric vehicle company is facing a class action lawsuit for allegedly using a sneaky tactic to avoid fulfilling obligations in warranty agreements attached to its customers' vehicles. Sounds familiar. I've heard other car companies doing things like this, but this is one that Tesla's basic model has afforded them that I don't think other car makers have fully embraced, and they shouldn't. But you'll love this one. Tesla is accused of manipulating the tech in its vehicles. The lawsuit filed on February 7th highlights that Tesla's warranties on vehicles are capped by mileage, like a lot of car makers. 5 years, 50,000 miles, right? Whatever comes first. Some people, 8 years, 80,000 miles, 5 years, 30 years, 30,000, whatever it is. Tesla has the same thing. Mileage is the end point of a certain obligation under warranty, right? And they're supposed to cover repairs and replacements necessary to correct defects in parts that it manufactures or supplies. However, Tesla allegedly knowingly overstates the distances traveled in Tesla vehicles by manipulating odometers, software odometers. They're not those little mechanical crank things anymore. And that's the case. Digital odometers in a lot of cases, in a lot of cars, but not hooked back to headquarters where they can find people's individual vehicles and say, you haven't driven 30,000 miles, you've driven 40,000 miles. Oh, I'm so sorry. The warranty on that part is over. What? Wow. There you go. They know, as they put it, knowingly overstate the distance by manipulating odometers, though. How else can you read this? Allowing the company to dodge repair responsibilities tied to warranties. Tesla Incorporated employs an odometer system that utilizes predictive algorithms, energy consumption metrics, and driver behavior multipliers that manipulate and misrepresent the actual mileage traveled by Tesla vehicles. You thought it was just measuring the number of miles you drove, like a regular odometer. But no, it's based on an algorithm, because everything in his life should be based on an algorithm. AI is telling you how many miles you drove. Is it right? No. What's it taking into account? Well, driver behavior. That doesn't change the distance I've changed. It might change wear and tear on the car, and I understand the inclination to want to void warranty based on that, but the warranty needs to say that in order for it to be true or real or enforceable. And then, of course, energy consumption, various other things. But yeah, to manipulate the odometer remotely is that's just a straight up crime. And I mentioned this the other day. I just, in passing on the way out the door on one of the previous programs, one of these things that I want to tell you about that Elon Musk is doing is just, I think, just a straight up crime. And this is the one. I forget what the other one already is now that I was going to tell you about. That may be a crime too. We'll get to that. In so doing, defendants can and do accelerate the rate of depreciation of the value of Tesla vehicles, and also the expiration of Tesla vehicle warranties to reduce or avoid responsibility for contractually required repairs, as well as increase the purchase of its extended warranty policy, right? People will buy that. Well, I find that was helpful because everything broke down right after the warranty. You should get the extended kind. Well, that's them telling you that the end has arrived a lot sooner than it really did. Not that the warranty wasn't sufficient. The plaintiff in the lawsuit, a California man who purchased a used 2020 Model Y Tesla vehicle with 36,772 miles on it, noted peculiar patterns in mileage accumulation during a time when he was constantly taking the car in for repairs due to issues with its suspension. So the computers at the dealership had the vehicle ID number, and oh my gosh, it keeps having these warranty-covered suspension issues. And every time it was returned to him, it was closer and closer to being out of warranty, even though he wasn't driving the thing. He noticed an abnormal spike in average daily miles driven, despite having a consistent driving routine that involved a short commute to work and occasional visits to the gym and local restaurants. In the lawsuit, he claims that this routine should have averaged about 20 miles per day. However, the odometer on the vehicle was accumulating an estimated 72.35 miles per day. As a result of this increased mileage accumulation, plaintiff's basic warranty expired well ahead of schedule. What a surprise. When the odometer read that the vehicle had reached 50,000 miles, read the lawsuit, Tesla allegedly told the plaintiff that his vehicle was no longer under warranty and refused to further repair his vehicle's suspension issue. Shortly after his basic warranty expired, he noticed a decline in the vehicle's reported average daily miles, despite driving longer commutes. He claimed that the decrease in miles was more closely aligned with his historical data on his other vehicles and commute at that time. The plaintiff is accusing Tesla of systematic inaccuracies and fraudulent business practices and is suing for an unknown amount of damages. How weird and frightening is that? Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. Hey, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, the Elon Musk Sucks show. I guess, I don't know. I wanted to give you another example of just how, but I wanted to finish up the piece from the street just by summarizing essentially that there's another section wherein several other users on Reddit in the discussion groups about Teslas have made the same claims, and they bring varying levels of evidence to back their claims. And, I guess we'll have to let the courts sort these things out. And there's always, the possibility that people are innumerate and they just don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I'm sure that would be the claim from Tesla. But it's, I think, well within our understanding of how things work. We can figure out, ordinarily, back in the day, if you told people, back when America was great, which, whatever, but you'd never have been able to convince anybody that the company, that the Ford Motor Company was secretly breaking into people's odometers in their driveways and moving them ahead by hand. That would be the only way you could do it. There was no secret, Ethernet. I don't know why I said Ethernet, but a cloud-based, internet infiltrating your car and changing your odometer. But even when other cars, non-electric cars, moved to digital odometers, I guess there's just this inherent trust. And that, by the way, I think that just came from the existence of a regulatory regime that made it illegal and punishable to manipulate an odometer. So even when they switch to the digital ones, and you think, why do we trust that this is even going to work? Like, at least with the old odometers, you might have wondered, how does it know how far things? Well, there's gears, and it's attached to the wheels are this big and the tires are that big, and when they turn, they cover this much ground, and if you count how many times the wheels turn, you'll know how far you're traveling, and it's mechanical. And it made a certain amount of sense. And although that's manipulable too, generally speaking, one, people understood the mechanics of how an odometer would work, and two, they were protected by a regulatory regime. The regulatory regime is still there, so I guess that was what instilled trust in people switching over to cars with digital odometers. Well, I don't understand the mechanics of it anymore, but I do know that it's super illegal somehow for that to be manipulated. So they're probably not doing it. Although, if you were paranoid enough, you were thinking, well, these huge automakers, billions of dollars, are probably bribing politicians and then avoiding responsibility that way. Maybe, maybe not. It was baked into the cost of doing business and the transactions in cars. The car companies were doing fine without cheating you that way. But then, yeah, in comes the new entrant who, isn't guaranteed a continued fortune because he's not heading an established car manufacturing concern that has a huge chunk of the market. They're trying to elbow their way in. So looking for any advantage they've got. The modernity of the car is the novelty that's selling it. So the software, basing it all on software, seems weird. But again, we've still, thanks to mostly to regulatory regimes elsewhere, come to understand, all right, I bought this computer. It's connected to the internet. I update it every day with software patches from the company, but they're probably not slowing the computer down in order to make me buy a new one, are they? Although now people are beginning to believe. I think that's what they're doing with phones and tablets and, maybe the laptops as well. It's scary how much control is afforded to, remote actors these days. But this is, I think, innovative, but probably pretty super illegal. And lots of people saying that they have the same problem going on. It deserves a look, and I guess it'll get one in court. In the meantime, there are other reasons why Elon Musk is terrible, also having to do with his private business. And this one comes from a publication we've read a couple of times and is car-focused, Jalopnik, right? Happened to see somebody sharing this one today. Elon Musk allegedly, this is a good crossover between his bad, his evil scheming in his private business concerns, crossing over with his egomania in running the government. So now you can, of course, leverage government power to steal more or manipulate or harm people in private business. Elon Musk allegedly threatened to deport Tesla engineers. Why? For bringing up brake safety issues. This according to a whistleblower speaking to, I don't know whether they spoke to Jalopnik or not, but Jalopnik is covering it. Andy Kalmowitz is the author of the piece, a former Tesla engineer turned whistleblower. So, same person, who was fired back in 2014, still trying to get justice, I guess, says she and her entire team were threatened with deportation after bringing up brake safety concerns directly to CEO Elon Musk. Christina Balan, a Romanian-born engineer, was recently successful in throwing out Tesla's arbitration case against her. Her goal is to see Tesla in an open courtroom in an effort to influence corporate policy across the country, the BBC reports. Okay, so she spoke to the BBC. Jalopnik read about that. I don't mind. Balon was heavily involved with the Model S, and I don't know, Balon, I'm not sure. Model S. Oh, and that's the good one. I like that one. Wouldn't buy one at this point, but that's the nicest looking one. So much so that her initials, CB, I guess, appear in the sedan's battery pack, according to Electrek. Okay. I mean, that's of some interest to some car nuts, I guess. In 2014, she went directly to, well, it's a little bit of a typo, but not a bad one. She went directly to Muck, not Musk. It's a C instead of an S. She went directly to Muck about safety concerns, saying that the Model S floor mats could cause some sort of brake safety issue if the accelerator pedal were to get stuck under the mat. A lot like, and they refer here to Toyota's unintended acceleration issues. You remember there was this rash of crazy claims about accidents that the car just would rev out of control and ram into things. And it turned out that one of the things they decided to try to use to explain it was that the car mats were getting stuck on the accelerator pedal, which now that's something that would cause uncontrolled acceleration. True. But again, also because of the software control nature of the vehicle, not being mostly mechanical, and it being an electric vehicle, there's a weird thing about the acceleration and the accelerator, but the braking pedal, like, I don't know. I find that weird to say, well, I have a braking problem. What's the problem? I'm stomping on the accelerator. Well, that's a could be user error, but 2, you have an acceleration issue, not a problem. It's responding as designed. Yeah, but then I can't stop in time to not hit the wall. Again, I wouldn't classify that as a braking issue. I mean, the brake is what you're going to want to use to try to not hit the wall, but had you been leaning on the brake the whole time, you would have been fine. You're not heading towards the wall at all. It's the putting the foot on the accelerator that is the issue for you. But anyway, I don't know. The fact that this is a software-controlled car, I mean, I guess it could screw up the braking because the braking has to be, it's not mechanical, but it is activated by touching that pedal. It's mechanical, at the wheel level, but not mechanical as between your foot and applying pressure and then squeezing calipers. That's done by electronics. Anyway, so maybe, I guess it's possible to classify it as a braking problem, that you keep pressing the wrong pedal. I don't know. But what ends up happening? She claims Musk chose the supplier of the brakes, I guess, based on friendship and not quality. And it just wasn't working out. And that sounds like Elon Musk. There's an embedded tweet here from Christina on, Twitter, now called X for some dumb reason, saying, I won the appeal against Elon Musk and Tesla. First appeal, Musk and Tesla lost. Grateful for my amazing friend and lawyer, William Moran. How do you like that? Who, by the way, tweets under the name Bill Always Wins. How do you like that? First ex-Tesla immigrant woman engineer who fight Musk as a pro se. A lot of firsts. Okay. Then she got a lawyer, I guess. All right. So definitely some weird history going on there. But this is kind of crazy. So let me read you a little bit more background here. In March of 2013, Musk sent out an email to the entirety of Tesla regarding an open door policy for bringing up product issues, saying you can talk to your manager's manager without permission. You can talk directly to a VP in another department. You can talk to me. You can talk to anyone without anyone else's permission. It made Balon think that she was safe to speak to Musk about the floor mat issue. However, when she showed up for a scheduled meeting with Musk, she was instead greeted by lawyers and, quote, large men in uniforms, unquote. They forced her to resign from her position. Here's what was said that during that meeting, as well as some of the fallout after it, according to Electrek, the publication that I guess first ran this story. During that meeting, Balon says that Tesla's lawyer threatened to deport many members of her team. So this was well before he had taken over the government, interestingly enough. He just knew that he had gone through a visa process to try to bring some international workers in because it was necessary and it was a good idea, but now he's against it somehow. But imagine then being able to later take over the government and say, now I can actually effectuate the deportations myself. Anyway, they threatened to deport her and other members of the team who are currently waiting on green card applications if she didn't sign the resignation, seemingly in response to her team backing her up in raising these concerns. She ended up signing the resignation in protest, writing on it that, quote, I'm resigning for the position that I was put in a month ago because I dare to speak up to the senior management, also because people that had the chance to speak up were threatened. And she's abbreviating in some of these things to BC, because, etc. When Balan's case got coverage in Huffington Post in 2017, Tesla sent a statement that Balan had stolen company resources to work on a secret personal project. Tesla email showed that Balan was told to work on this project by leadership. After this, Balan says she faced difficulty in finding work as companies feared ending up on Musk's blacklist. She filed a defamation lawsuit over the statement, but Tesla forced her case into arbitration and was able to get the defamation suit thrown out. She appealed the decision, and after many delays, including her fight against stage 3B cancer, which is now in remission, she succeeded in getting the arbitration case thrown out while representing herself, according to BBC News. That is a rarity. Congratulations. I want to clear my name, she told BBC News. I wish Elon Musk had the decency to apologize. Well, you're going to have a long wait for that one. But anyway, if you didn't think Elon Musk was a terrible person, I don't even know what you're doing here. So I didn't change your mind about it. I just gave you more information about how terrible he is and why. But that gives me an interesting segue to another terrible person and another story that involves cancer. I didn't know that I was going to go this direction, but I happened to see a Talking Points memo and being posted on Blue Sky yesterday by Josh Marshall. I thought maybe it was Hunter Walker who wrote the story. This was a, I don't know what to tell you. What caught my eye? I think the picture, because I recognize who was in the picture. And maybe you will too. I think we covered this guy years and years ago, and it'll come back to you. Here's the headline. Newly minted DOJ employee, I'm going to skip the name for a second because it's in the headline, keeps posting, quote, Antifa, unquote, death fantasies online. Par for the course for the Trump administration, true. But the headline, I omitted the name. It's Michael Caputo. Do you remember Michael Caputo? I remember Michael Caputo for sure, for several reasons. If you've been listening to the show since, whenever, the beginning, he was, of course, in the first Trump administration and was an evil bastard in the first Trump administration. And then he had like some weird kind of mental breakdown in public, and he was tweeting in the middle of the night, crazy ass nonsense, and really, but sort of, again, par for the course, even in the first Trump administration. And then he ended up resigning. He was in all sorts of trouble as well. But then it was struck with cancer. And then there was like this round of sympathetic feature pieces on him as he was reevaluating his life. I've been such an evil bastard, and now I have this terrible cancer. And I'm really reevaluating all the decisions I've made. Well, anyway, guess what? He's reevaluated all his decisions, and he's back to be a bastard to more people. And it leads me to wonder, was he being truthful about the cancer? Because, the nature of the cancer that he had, I wouldn't have thought he would be back at all. But he is. But just another Republican asshole. I don't know whether he's bald or not. But
bald asshole?
Let's see. It doesn't look like it from his picture. All right, he's balding, we'll say. But anyway, just another Republican a-hole who specifically the type who is granted a second chance at life. And I guess if you believe, people are weird about whether or not they believe that the Trump assassination attempt was a real one. But I guess if you believe that was genuine, again, you've been given a second chance at life. You, Steve Scalise, I'm thinking of, who was definitely shot. And also using his second chance at life to come back and ruin other people's lives, make them miserable. drive them into despair. It seems like really the opposite of what you should be doing with these things. Okay, so Michael Caputo, the current story, if I can read the whole thing, and I'm not certain that I can, is, again, by Hunter Walker. The week before last, veteran GOP operative Michael Caputo was hired by one of President Trump's most controversial nominees, and that's saying something, to advise him ahead of what is expected to be a tough confirmation fight. And I started to wonder, who is one of the worst nominees who's still not yet confirmed? And the answer is Ed Martin, who we've only partially profiled here on the show, but other people have written some very in-depth profiles about him. He's just insane. And this is, of course, the guy who is, in fact, the acting, although he keeps saying interim, U.S. attorney for D.C., and again, not a prosecutor, not a guy with the background who should be doing this, so not really up to the task in that sense, but also just a right-wing lunatic podcaster influencer. Now, I'm just a left-wing lunatic podcaster and not even an influencer, you see, but all sorts of conspiracy theories. And, of course, fully in on the January 6th thing, himself present on the grounds of the Capitol on January 6th, though he denies going in the building, etc. And he's just making the most absurd pronouncements in all of these cases involving everything. Immigration, dodgy cuts, you name it. Anyway, Michael Caputo is the a-hole they brought in to try to get Ed Martin through his confirmation process. And apparently it's in real trouble because, Martin has been demonstrating to everybody, including some annoyed Republicans, just how crazy he really is. Anyway, so week before last, veteran GOP operative Caputo hired by ... It was a surprising pick, in part because Caputo has a history of his own that includes years of conspiratorial rants on social media, previously referred to as mental breakdowns. And even in the days since he joined the Trump administration, Caputo has made multiple posts online, continuing a long-running bit in which he muses about Antifa, quote-unquote Antifa, really, coming to his home to threaten him, and instead being eaten by wild animals, which is the sort of thing that when it's described that way makes me think, well, that could very well be his weirdo, sicko sense of humor making jokes, like we say about it. Gerald Ford eaten by wolves, right? That sort of thing. But I don't know. Anyway, the point is, with or without that, he is an asshole. In the early morning hours of April 14th, Caputo posted a picture of a panther on Elon Musk's X social network, along with an ominous caption indicating that it was lying in wait for Antifa near his home, which I don't know how incensed we really need to be about something like that. But this Florida panther was in my neighborhood, Caputo wrote. Antifa may come again. They never came the first time. But this time they won't leave. Ha-ha. Not because I'm tough, but because there's a panther nearby. Whatever. One day earlier, on April 13th, Caputo posted a nearly identical message along with a picture of a black bear. And on April 12th, Caputo made a similar post featuring an image of an alligator and another message indicating Antifa would meet its end in the creature's jaws. The New York Times reported that Caputo was officially hired the week before last to advise Ed Martin, who Trump nominated in February to serve as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia and who has held that role in an acting capacity for most of the administration so far. According to the Times, prior to his hiring, Caputo was informally counseling Martin, so on a volunteer basis, helping the other asshole. Helping Martin, anyway, a longtime conservative activist, that is Martin, who served as an attorney for some January 6th defendants. Not as a prosecutor, defense attorney. Martin's nomination has attracted controversy for his past work and his conduct since arriving in the U.S. Attorney's Office, including sending letters to Democrats in Congress indicating that their criticisms of Trump and of the Supreme Court could be seen as, quote, threats against public officials, which is, of course, you could absolutely see all those things that stupid things that Caputo is posting as threats, not against public officials, though. but whatever. Senate Democrats have put a hold on Martin's nomination, slowing down the process, and at least one Republican senator has expressed skepticism about his confirmation, though lots of people have done that about worse nominees and still turned around. When Caputo's hiring was revealed, Martin gave a statement to the Times praising him as a great fighter with a long personal relationship with Trump. Caputo certainly does have a reputation as a political brawler. Throughout his career, Caputo specialized in what he has called smash-mouth politics. His no-holds-barred approach included sparring on the internet and in other mediums with members of the media, including with this reporter, that is to say, Hunter Walker. And it's linked if you want to read the story behind that one. And his combative approach to the internet has been evident in the days since he signed on with Martin. Within just the past week, Caputo has, among other things, issued an ominous warning to a Democratic strategist who criticized Martin and mocked a woman with an OnlyFans page as fat. Like, okay. I mean, not okay, but just, teenager behavior. But for some reason, super serious and important consultant in Republican circles. Anyway, on April 19th, after journalist John Harwood posted anti-Trump commentary, Caputo declared Harwood had, quote, completely lost his mind, which is coming from a guy we watched lose his mind in public years ago, and predicted that he would have a, quote, violent outburst that will cause something horrible, unquote. Yet, even among these intense messages, Caputo's dark musings about Antifa stand out as particularly dramatic. Caputo's posts about the animals hunting down, quote, Antifa, clearly contain an element of the fantastical and are almost certainly sarcastic. However, even as humor, this type of violent language is unusual coming from an employee of the Department of Justice. Yes. Last week, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche sent out a letter to agency staff restricting their social media activity amid concerns about political rhetoric posted by some Trump appointees. Caputo's recent comments fit with what has been a running series on his, quote, X account, involving visions of animals taking down Antifa. In other posts, he has referred to the gator as Victor, for some reason. Caputo's April 13th message about the bear prompted another user of the site to share a picture of another gator and declare that Victor has backup. It's always lunchtime for Victor, Caputo replied. In an email to TPM, Caputo suggested the posts were entirely joking. I'm sure that it is. Anyway, seems to me that these particular posts are not necessarily what's important, but rather the fact that Caputo is back and really shouldn't be. Let me skip down here to Caputo, who describes Trump's longtime advisor Roger Stone as akin to a big brother and mentor. Has known the president since the 1980s. During that decade, he worked for the D.C. lobbying firm headed by Stone and Trump's 2016 campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. Caputo's career also took him abroad. By the way, also took him briefly to a company where I worked, which wasn't even a very big company. It was never made any sense that he was there. He didn't do the things that we did. But I think he was brought in by investors who backed the. It was the golden age of everybody who made $1 million in something became a venture capitalist in the I don't know, the not 1990s, but early 2000s, internet, the dot-com boom. And he was brought in as a part of our effort by upper management there to attach .com to our name. That was in the days when people thought, if we change our name from Smith Plumbing to smithplumbing.com, our valuation will increase just because we're a .com, and we can sell ourselves for $1 billion, even though all we are plumbers. But we're .com. You see, that was where he was coming from. Anyway, let's see. A veteran, Caputo worked for a USAID, how do you like that, funded endeavor that consulted on the election process in Russia in the 1990s. So USAID apparently actually, unfortunately, responsible for the rise of the Putin dictatorship there. Anyway, he ended up living in the country and working on public relations for various politicians and businesses in Russia and Ukraine through the early 2000s. So not a great background to be back here and in the clear on criminal conspiracy to destroy the United States, I would say. These various connections helped Caputo secure a place in Trump's orbit as the president began his political career. He worked on Trump's campaigns in 2016 and 2020. And during the first Trump administration, Caputo served as Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs in the Department of Health and Human Services. Caputo's tie to Russia also helped attract the interest of investigators within the House, Senate, and Special Counsel Robert Mueller, who are examining the Kremlin's interference in the 2016 election. Caputo vehemently denied any wrongdoing in conjunction with that campaign. The whole thing. Since then, social media controversies and descriptions of anticipated Antifa violence have both played a prominent role in Caputo's career. April 2020, shortly after tapped to serve as a top spokesman for Trump's HHS during the COVID pandemic, CNN reported that Caputo had deleted almost all of his old tweets. Prior to that deletion, Caputo's post contained what the network described as a racist and derogatory comments about Chinese people and conspiratorial assertions both Democrats and the press were trying to benefit from the virus somehow. A lengthy Politico profile noted that soon after, in May of 2020, Caputo's wife called police in their western New York town to report a man had driven past their home shouting obscenities. The next month, as false rumors swirled in right-wing, far-right circles that Antifa was staging attacks on white neighborhoods, quote-unquote, Caputo, according to the Politico profile, called the police to say that he was advised that Antifa will be targeting small towns tonight. You remember that craze? He was involved. And concerned that they will target East Aurora and his residents. So a little bit of a crazy man. All this culminated in a September 2020 incident where Caputo made a 26-minute broadcast on Facebook Live where, without providing any evidence, he warned that government scientists and others in the federal bureaucracy were plotting sedition against President Trump. Caputo also claimed that there were anti-Trump hit squads being trained all over this country. At the time, Caputo had just been diagnosed with head and neck cancer. While he did not reveal that on the broadcast, Caputo said he was not in good physical health and declared that his mental health had definitely failed. He went on to describe feeling alone in Washington, where there were shadows on the ceiling in my apartment, which I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Anyway, we played the wrong music there. Sorry about that. Fix that in post. All right. Anyway, there alone, shadows are so long, Caputo said. After the streaming session made headlines, Caputo apologized to HHS staff for bringing him negative attention. He attributed his statements on the broadcast to the combined stress of the physical health issues and the alleged death threats. He subsequently took a leave of absence. Okay, why all of this happening now? What does it bring you up to date on? I'll tell you after this. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I got some repairs to do in post-production. All right, Caputo, crazy, had a meltdown in public, took a leave of absence, had this terrible head and neck cancer, and now back. How do you like that? Now, there's more to it. So we left off that he took this leave of absence. Caputo went on then to drop out of the public eye to undergo cancer treatment. In the Politico profile, which was published in August of 2021, and I took a look back at it, you should see it, Caputo indicated that he turned to religion during this time. Okay. And expressed a belief that his disease was stress-induced after the Russia probes and his work on the pandemic response. Caputo also indicated the experience had led him to really turning away from smash-mouth politics. However, a few years after that story of survival and redemption, Caputo is back in government and clearly back to brawling on social media. And despite insisting that he remains under threat of violence, Caputo showed no interest in retreating. On April 17th, Caputo shared an ex-post mocking the author Stephen King for criticizing Trump. He included a dramatic vow, "I'm never deleting this app," Caputo said. I don't know why that's so dramatic, but okay. Basically, though, this is another one of those guys who's gone through this arc and, please, God, if you spare me, I'll never. All right. Whether it's never drink again or never be a smash mouth politician again, but back he is. And you can really trace his arc the way I did it with screen grabs of these stories, including the one that he referred to here in this article from Politico, which you really should see. Politico magazine, the Friday cover story here, it says, "It nearly killed me. Michael Caputo's life after years fighting for Trump. After a public meltdown and cancer, Michael Caputo is re-examining his career as a smash-mouth politician." And he gets this very sympathetic profile and illustrated with a picture of him sitting instead of his, power suit in his casual clothing on a bench. And I guess he's in the Buffalo, New York area, but he's in front of this, I guess, graffiti mural spray painted on a brick building side somewhere that has, a set of angel wings about the height at which if a person of normal height stood in front of it, it would look like they had angel wings, it would come out from their shoulders. But he's seated in front of it instead, so it actually looks like two big giant bunny ears. But I don't know why they chose to sit for this rather than stand. I don't know. Anyway, the point is, this is the turning over a new leaf here. I realize the error of my ways, and it brought me low with this terrible cancer. More to the point for the current story arc, though. I wanted to point out this story from 2020, I guess just after his meltdown when he was going into cancer treatment. So we begin with the 2021, I'm reevaluating my life. But then I look back at 2020, CNN reporting on this, Michael Caputo, the top spokesman for the Department of Health and Human Services, who recently began a 2-month medical leave, had been diagnosed with a metastatic head and neck cancer. A spokesman for the Caputo family said on Thursday, and it was pretty serious. And my own understanding of the disease is, any metastatic cancer, very, very dangerous and not easy to survive. So it would make you reevaluate your life. But then 10 minutes might pass, and if you're Michael Caputo, you might say, I haven't destroyed enough lives. I have to come back to government and do it again. But of more importance, just this little side note, which at the time, okay, sure, fine, exactly. That's what you would do, right? I just want to point out that he was initially treated with a first surgery where at the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland. Remember, he's here in Washington and working in the government, and in fact, a top spokesperson for the HHS department. So it makes a certain amount of sense. But just remember, National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland, where doctors diagnosed Caputo with squamous cell carcinoma, a metastatic head and neck cancer which originated in his throat, according to a spokesperson there. And of course, not a great prognosis, but whatever. He made it. Terrific, right? Plus he's got the redemption, and he's reevaluating his career as a smash-mouth politician. Okay, fast forward to today. Not necessarily about Michael Caputo directly, but you might be wondering, hey, how's that National Cancer Institute doing now under Dodgy? Well, you could be forgiven for asking that question. The answer is, as reported on February 14th by Josh Marshall over at TPM, interestingly enough. Everyone else too, but I grabbed his. This afternoon, he wrote, termination notices were going out to more than 300 employees at the National Cancer Institute. Locked out of access by the end of the day, 4 weeks paid leave, and that's that. And it's been 4 weeks since February 14th, so if they actually effectuated those firings and they haven't been held up in court, those people are gone. The people who saved Michael Caputo from this horrible metastatic cancer, or who diagnosed it initially anyway, and set him on his path of treatment, are gone now. I got mine. F all of you. I'm coming back to reevaluate my life as a smash-mouth politician. The National Cancer Institute saved my life. You have a life, but F you and F your life. We're going to fire those people so they're never going to be there for you. And now, of course, we land at the fourth act of the play. Newly minted DOJ employee Michael Caputo keeps posting Antifa death fantasies online. Another unfortunate failure of the trolley problem by public doctors doing the great work that makes our country the best, or at least used to. And now that they have saved the people they probably shouldn't have, the people who were saved have come back to make sure that no other people get saved later on. It's very, very unfortunate, to say the least. So there you go, and that's the state we're in with these idiots. On to other stories. There are many, and if we can get back to pocket correctly, it's going to take us a little while. We can share a couple more with you. What else have we got here for you? What is this one? Why is this open? We must ask ourselves this question. Is this the one? All right. Well, Oh, okay. Actually, all right, now I got it. It's not the story so much as the reaction to the story that I was interested in, and grabbed a Blue Sky thread from John Pfaff. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's P-F-A-F-F. I don't know how else you would do it. A professor at the law school at Fordham University, and I don't know. He says, I'm not contrarian, the data are. That's very funny. Okay. He's got this very, I think, good observation, backing up, some things we've noticed along the way as well. And just, putting a finer point on it by being a law professor. I keep saying everything that Trump does needs to be covered in a certain way. And it's difficult to make the entire media listen to me sometimes. But, essentially just saying, look, the way to manage reporting on things that the administration is doing and not being embarrassed either immediately or later on is to take everything with a grain of salt and literally say that the president purports to be doing this or purports to have done this. And you'll never be wrong. Initially, right, if he does accomplish it, fine. He purported to have done it, and then it was later established that he did. But you'll be saving yourself more trouble later on normally by saying he purported to do this, and that is why it is not embarrassing at this stage to report that he didn't do it, and he never intended to do it, and he never had the authority to do it in the first place. He just asserted that authority, and dumb writers in the media believed it, but not me. I said that he purported it. Well, John's making the similar point here. The Washington Post headline on the piece that triggers this apparently is Draft Executive Order outlines plan to integrate AI into K-12 schools. Now, of course, Linda McMahon being the Secretary of Education, that was, of course, A1, not AI. But Draft Executive Order outlines plans to integrate AI, A1, into K-12 schools. Now, it sounds, John says, like the executive order will be making this happen. But in reality, it is the order, as with almost all such orders, and there are thousands of them at this point, and they occupy Trump's day with these things. And you might think someone was working overtime coming up with executive orders for him to sign, and they are, but it's not like they're actually figuring out how to do things. What they've figured out how to do is come up with a paper that the president can safely sign that will make him feel like he's presidenting, but not actually do anything in particular. Not because they're worried about doing those things, but because they don't know how to do them. And so what you get is where this is an executive order that John says sounds like it will make this idea of integrating AI into K through 12 schools. The reality is that all it does is encourages agencies to take fairly limited steps aimed at encouragement. It's encouraging people to aim at encouragement. It's true. That's not just, odd writing. Since direct federal control over schools is, limited. Stop, as he says, overselling EOs, executive orders. And that's true. Trump has a real problem understanding the scope of government in general, and certainly the scope of the individual departments. As evidenced elsewhere, by twice, at least, and maybe more, because he probably has had more energy secretaries than just the ones I can remember. I can't remember the current one. Doesn't matter. He was appointed for the same reason that the one I remember, Rick Perry, was appointed. Trump thinks the energy secretary's portfolio includes drilling for oil and gas, like that kind of energy. But in fact, it doesn't. I mean, maybe it was a poorly designed department, maybe it was a poorly named department, but it really mostly has to do with nuclear energy more than anything else. And the portfolio, the actual portfolio, is really rather surprising. And, you know, it's something for which the people Trump keeps appointing are unprepared because they had the same misunderstanding. Anyway, similarly, Department of Education is not about, I heard that sixth graders were reading a book in this school and I think it's inappropriate, and I want the Department of Education to fix that. It's just far removed from what the Department of Education actually does. They're much more focused, of course, on post-secondary education and the finance of it, but there are certainly grant programs that help supplement spending on K through 12 schools, etc., but it's just not the focus of what they do. I bring this up only because there was another thing, another angry tweet thing. It was actually Truth Social thing that he posted the other day, ranting about something, and he wanted his great, education secretary to look into fixing this thing. And I don't even remember what it was, but it was garbage top to bottom. Anyway, as John is telling us, this draft executive order, which outlines a plan to integrate A1, doesn't do anything. His screen grab from the Washington Post reads, the draft order would instruct federal agencies to seek public-private partnerships with industry, academia, and nonprofit groups in efforts to teach students foundational AI literacy and critical thinking skills. The task force should look for existing federal funding, such as grants that could be used for AI programs, and agencies should prioritize spending on AI education, according to the draft order. It would also instruct the Education Secretary, Linda McMahon, to prioritize federal grant funding for training teachers on how to use AI, including for administrative tasks and teacher training and evaluation. All educators should undergo professional development to integrate AI into all subject areas, the draft order says. Now, besides the fact that it's not a good idea, and besides the fact that most AI chatbots have instructions online such that even idiots can use it, and so therefore teachers will probably be able to manage it just fine and don't need any grant programs. It would be a waste, fraud, and abuse to spend money on the training programs. But of course, probably his cronies will be developing the training programs, and the Department of Education will be instructed to grant the federal dollars to those people to do nothing. He points out that, one, it's not really a good subject for an executive order to begin with, and two, it doesn't do anything. I instruct people to look for ways to think of things that we could do where you could apply for some grants. Well, you could do that anyway. It didn't matter. We didn't need any executive order to do it. And as he points out here, it's just, you're just overselling this fact that, the headline writers are making it look like Trump has, kicked the doors of every school down and pushed AI into it, whatever that might even mean. He goes on to say, it's really becoming a crisis in how we cover Trump. He's discovered, or others have discovered for him, if he sits at his desk and signs some papers in a dark blue folder, it'll be covered like the executive order is new law. That's true. And I mean, that's why he's doing this he didn't have executive order signing ceremonies ordinarily. This is like kind of a new invention. And now he invites members of Congress and he gives away the pens that he's using to sign orders, even though the orders don't do anything. And it's all about the illusion of presidenting. But yeah, headlines that say things like Trump, I guess he's going over the top, making a joke here. Trump signs EO making Bitcoin official U.S. currency. No. That's just a fever dream scrawled on a napkin. And he says, I'm not being hyperbolic. Articles are already treating his hyperbolic efforts to redo the Smithsonian as done deals, for instance, even though he lacks the power, and what power he has often faces real resistance. Executive orders are just orders to underlings to do what the law already permits them to do. And if you read the EOs, they very often say, well, I'm encouraging the secretary of whatever to look into doing everything that's practicable under the law and within compliance with the law, not actually defying the law or changing the law or anything like that. And that's a huge hedge. But yeah, executive orders are just orders to underlings to do what the law already permits them. And he includes one of his previous posts on the subject, in which reads, it's only at the 41st paragraph that the Washington Post first notes that Trump's order to Halligan is not really an order, since Trump doesn't actually control the Smithsonian. That's another story to tell you. Maybe that's what I'll transition to next. And then paragraph 42 Green Lanterns Trump's executive order by saying, quote, the illegal thing will happen anyway. It's not a quote, but saying the illegal thing will happen anyway when maybe it won't. What is this about? This is about clearing out wrongthink from the Smithsonian Institution. I've got another article I can share with you, and it's probably this one. That will explain some of it. But here, the screen grab begins with this part is highlighted here. How Halligan and the vice president, who is on the board of regents, will carry out the executive order remains to be seen. The order is unusual because the Smithsonian's programming is not under the purview of the executive branch. Yeah, that's the part that makes sense, or that's necessary for John Pfaff's rant here. Executive orders cannot rewrite the Constitution. They are not end runs that create new laws. They are just to-do lists for executive branch officials. That is a good way of thinking about them. Now, that will bring us back around to the story of Halligan and who Halligan is. And I think I pocketed this, and in case I didn't, I can go back this way and find it out. Here we are, and it is in, unfortunately enough, maybe this isn't what he was referring to, but as a style section piece about Halligan and who Halligan is. Let me see, does he link to the piece he's pointing to here? Where's the, let's see. I don't know. Maybe in one of the previous stories. No, yeah, I think, all right. I don't know where he grabbed it from, but he may or may not be referring to this story, which we have from the Washington Post style section. She told Trump the Smithsonian needs changing. He's ordered her to do it, by which we mean change the Smithsonian, although he may also have ordered her to do it. We don't know. I'll just point that out because as soon as you see the photo illustrating the piece of her long blonde tresses, you'll say, I am immediately judging a book by its cover and wondering whether she is up to the task of reforming the Smithsonian even though it doesn't need it. Or is it that she's somebody that he likes looking at, and so I'm giving you a federal job? Who is Lindsey Halligan? Well, I don't know. But they helpfully remind us here in the subheader. Who is Lindsey Halligan? The attorney assigned to help remove, quote, improper ideology, unquote, from a major cultural institution. That's the Smithsonian. Wow. Maura Judkis, Judkis, is the writer of this style section piece. There is only one person mentioned by name in President Donald Trump's March 27th executive order titled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. That's the order that seeks to, quote, restore the Smithsonian Institution to its rightful place as a symbol of inspiration and American greatness, unquote, through removing mentions of historical racism. And the name in that order will probably not ring a bell. Well, it does now because we've said it 10 times. Lindsey Halligan Esquire. It's listed as, how do you like that? Halligan, according to the order, will consult with Vice President J.D. Vance to, quote, remove improper ideology, unquote, from Smithsonian properties. The first question is, what is improper ideology exactly? The second, who is Lindsey Halligan Esquire? We have her on the phone, actually. She's calling from the White House. Okay, I guess I must have an interview. Quote, I would say that improper ideology would be weaponizing history, Halligan says. Well, that's not what it is. It's what it's doing. But okay. We don't need to overemphasize the negative to teach people that certain aspects of our nation's history may have been bad. That overemphasis just makes us grow further and further apart. Man. Whatever. She didn't say man. As for the second question, Halligan, 35, is a Trump attorney, oh no, who seems to have tasked herself as a sort of commissioner or expurgator, according to critics, of a premier cultural institution. Based on what? I don't know. After moving to D.C. just before the inauguration to continue working for Trump as a special assistant and senior associate staff secretary, Halligan visited the local cultural institutions, including the Smithsonian Museums of Natural History, American History, and American Art. So she's an expert. She didn't like everything she saw. Oh, I didn't know that. Some exhibits, in her view, did not reflect the America she knows and loves. And so I talked to the president about it, as people will do, and suggested an executive order, and he gave me his blessing, and here we are. That's all there is to it. Here we are. A former Fox News host is leading the Pentagon for the time being, not covering today's top story, which is probably that it seems like all the levers are being pulled and buttons are being pushed to push Hegseth out. The word is that we don't know how reliable it is. I don't know who's reporting it. But the things I saw in passing in social media yesterday, they're looking at a new list of, give me a new defense secretary is basically what Trump is saying. And then I'll say, I'm doing this because of how strongly strong everybody I like is. And I'm just switching people for some strange reason. But definitely not admitting mistake. Anyway, so where were we? Halligan. Here we are. Former Fox News host leading the Pentagon, vaccine skeptic running the Department of Health and Human Services, former professional wrestling executive at the head of the Department of Education and A1. And Lindsey Halligan, Esquire, could turn a major cultural institution upside down. How did she arrive at this point? Hope Hicks, how does she do it? And how does this person who looks a little bit like Hope Hicks end up with this job task? I think if you side by side Lindsey Halligan and Hope Hicks, you'll probably solve the mystery of how did we get Lindsey Halligan? How did she arrive at this point? Halligan grew up in Broomfield, Colorado. They helpfully offer. I mean, that's not the solution to it. It's not that everyone from Broomfield, not Bloomfield, New Jersey, Broomfield, Colorado, gets to run the Smithsonian. But she does. Halligan grew up there, went to a private Catholic high school, Holy Family, in case you want to know, where she excelled at softball and basketball. Her parents worked in the audiology industry. I don't know what that, I know what it means, but her parents worked in the automotive industry, like a mechanic or a car salesman or an engineer. What are you talking about? Anyway, Halligan's sister, Gavin. I didn't realize that was a sisterly name, but okay. Halligan's sister, Gavin, a family law attorney in Colorado, ran for a state House seat as a Republican in 2016 in a blue district and lost. Okay. Halligan attended Regis University, a Jesuit university in Denver, where she studied politics and broadcast journalism. She was always interested in history, she says. That's good. Smithsonian. Particularly the Civil War and the westward expansion of the country, which, are two of those bad periods, I guess, which is, I guess, what has started her concern. I read that these things were great. And these things say there were problems with it. She competed in, again, you haven't seen her picture yet, maybe. If you're listening live, maybe you Googled her to see if she looks like Hope Hicks, and that should give you a hint. And I told you, how did she end up here? Gee whiz, I don't know. She competed in the Miss Colorado USA pageant, making the semifinals in 2009. Did Trump own Miss USA in 2009 still? And earning third runner-up in 2010, according to photos and records of the event. There's my answer. This was back when Trump co-owned the organization that puts on the Miss Universe pageant, for which Miss Colorado USA is a preliminary event. Now, I guess she competed in Miss Colorado. She made the semifinals, third runner-up in 2010. So she never progressed from the Miss Colorado pageant up to the Miss USA pageant. But the point is that somewhere along the line, having owned the organization, had Trump decided to visit Denver at the right time, he could have burst into the dressing room to see her naked. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Anyway, she runs the Smithsonian now. There you have it. All right, we got to take our break. I'll give you one more paragraph before we run out of here, and then I got 2 minutes to evaluate whether or not I need to tell you the rest of the story. Sports and pageants taught me confidence, discipline, and how to handle pressure, and that is great. Same for Sarah Palin, who famously reminded us, since we were reminded just the other day of the ride of Paul Revere, 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's ride. Sarah Palin and her sports and pageant participation brought her all the way to the national stage, where she told everybody that Paul Revere's ride involved him warning the British by ringing bells that night, warning the British to look out because we weren't going to have our freedoms taken. And we were going to stand up and be free Americans. Ring, ring, look out, Britishers. Well, we'll see whether Lindsey believes the same things.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, a.k.a. Darwin_Darko, a.k.a. the most reasonable man in America, a.k.a. KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Well, okay, we're spending our Tuesday wandering around in some of the less covered stories, but they usually pay off. I don't know, we got a pretty good sense that people are going to end up being players at some point, and you'll want to have heard a little bit about their background. And, you know, Smithsonian, it's a major story. So we were talking about Lindsey Halligan, and we were guilty of judging this book by its cover. But, you know, I will point out, typically for marketing reasons and others, people generally attempt to reflect the actual contents and theme of the book on the covers these days. Although, you know, I guess plain leather binding covers don't tell you too much. But these illustrated covers, they do. Anyway, we just found out about how much she loved sports and pageants. They taught her confidence, discipline, and how to handle pressure on the court, on the field, on the stage, in the courtroom, and now in the White House, Halligan says in a post-interview email. That's a broad application of the idea. She studied law at the University of Miami. She interned for the Innocence Project, which is nice, which works to exonerate wrongfully convicted people. She was sabotaging it. And the Miami-Dade County Public Defender's Office. Halligan was a, quote, very smart, respectful, and well-liked student, said one of her professors, who spoke on condition of anonymity because she did not have permission from the university to speak about a former student. The professor recalls that people often underestimated Halligan because of her good looks. I am overestimating her because of her good looks, so I'm off the hook on that one. No, I'm not. Anyway, Halligan graduated in 2013, so a seasoned attorney, and handled insurance matters in South Florida for a firm called Cole, Scott, and Cassane. And I'm sure it was good work, too. What did we say? Insurance matters in South Florida. And so also, I like history, and I want the Smithsonian Institute remade in my image. She made partner in 2018 and defeated a more than $500,000 property damage claim in a 2019 case about a leaky roof. So, this was federal attorney she had written all over her. I mean, making partner is great. I don't know how big the firm is. Coe, Scott, and Cassane graduated from college in 2013, 5 years to partner, so not a huge firm, but okay. And I don't know where else this information would come from, but from maybe her own bio or LinkedIn page. But I guess her chief accomplishment was winning a case involving more than $500,000 in property damage because of a leaky roof. So Solicitor General material, really, is what we're saying here. Halligan says she met Trump at a November 2021 event. So we're talking about an insurrectionist out of power. They meet, and she says, "This is my destiny," for some reason. She met him at an event at Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach. She had come from court and was in a suit. What? Which probably made her stand out from other female attendees. Trump noticed her, asked what she did. "What do you do, dear?" And made her a part of his legal team in early 2022. God help us all. So I left court. I dyed my hair. I went to the golf club where Trump was going to be, and I stood in his line of sight. And lo and behold, I was hired into the White House eventually. She gets hired to his legal team in 2022. Now, he's facing serious charges of insurrection, etc., and a number of other things. But, what the hell? What do you do, dear? Oh, gross. Just Trump noticed her. I mean, it's straightforward. I mean, I can't blame her, right? Whatever her scheme is, it's working. And her scheme is, I'm good looking and I'm going to use that. Now, I'm underestimating her, but she's used it to make partner in 5 years, defeated a claim for over $500,000 from a leaky roof. And I mean, not everybody can do that. And then put on a suit, went to a club and stood in the line of sight of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, she looks like Hope Hicks. "What do you do, dear?" "I'm a lawyer." "You're my lawyer now." And it was so. So from November 2021, that's when she met him. And then by early 2022, she's on the Trump's legal team. So that is some career trajectory from standing around in a suit. She won the leaky roof thing. Don't get me wrong. She won the leaky roof case. You know that one, right? So I remember that from con law. Then, of course, there was the Florida leaky roof case. And now, a few months after that, she's the president's lawyer. So graduated 2013, 2018, she's a partner at Cole, Scott, and Cassane. 2019, wins the leaky roof case. 2021, goes to a golf course. 2022, president's lawyer. Halligan said she met Trump that's the one I just read. In The President, I saw the same thing that I saw when I interned at the Innocence Clinic. Holy. Someone who was getting railroaded by the system, Halligan says, missed the point. Wow. Then there's a photo of Halligan in New York in 2022 with other members of Trump's legal team. Evan Corcoran, James Trusty, remember that? Chris Kise, we remember him in the back. And then, of course, she's walking along there with big loop earrings. Yeah, she's in a sort of I don't know, what would you say? This is periwinkle dress? I don't know. The lawyers are in the suits. She's not in a suit, interestingly. That's how she got the job, and yet there she is not in a suit. Anyway, what can I tell you? And no one remembers her from the case, right? So what can I tell you? And how interesting is that? Not very. She was present at Mar-a-Lago for the August 2022 FBI raid of the president's property, during which classified documents were seized. It wasn't a raid. With her pageant looks, legal degree, and broadcast journalism training, she became one of the president's defenders on TV. And so maybe, I don't know, if we watched Fox more, we would have seen her. They looked at God knows what in there and did God knows what in there. Oh, that's probably. She looked at God knows what in there, and they did God knows what in there. Halligan told Sean Hannity on Fox News shortly after the search, "We have no idea." There's camera footage of it, actually. What the FBI did was an appalling display of abuse of power. Halligan was a front row guest in Trump's box at the 2024 Republican National Convention. She was later a target of Iranian hackers looking to infiltrate the campaign, according to CNN. She had become part of Trump's inner circle. The president holds her in high regard, says John Rowley, a former Trump attorney who worked with Halligan. She obviously has the president's confidence. Oh, man. Halligan has been pictured in the Oval Office, sometimes at the side of Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and the president signs various documents. Well, I'll be. On March 6th, Halligan herself introduced 2 proclamations on Irish American Heritage Month. Why? Halligan. And Women's History Month. Why? Because she's a woman. In honor of everything you've done for women, she told the president, raping untold numbers of them, for instance. Then there was the March 27th executive order, signed behind closed doors, as it's noted here, according to ABC News, in which Halligan herself was named. At Halligan's own suggestion, God give me the confidence these people have. I'm like, I don't know. If I ask people for $5, it makes me a bad guy. I'm constantly, I'm worried about these things. Halligan, do you know me? I won the leaky roof case. I'm going to stand here until I become the president's attorney. And by the way, I have an idea for you, sir. Sign this. It names me to do a thing that I would like to do. Revamp the Smithsonian Institution. Okay, and let's close the door. I'm sure he was just signing. That's why they closed the door. Because, he hates it when people see him sign papers. She is an avid and well-read fan of history, emails Jim Trusty, who worked with Halligan, until he resigned from Trump's legal team, citing irreconcilable differences with Trump. I had no idea that there was going to be an executive order regarding the Smithsonian, but in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense to me that Lindsey would have a role. Sure. The order affirmed her title, or rather purported to, her title using a splendid cascade of Washington jargon, Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy and the Special Assistant to the President and Senior Associate Staff Secretary. What? Okay. The Organization of American Historians was sharper in its estimation of the other words in the executive order, a disturbing attack on core institutions and history itself. Trump is not much of a museum goer, the piece notes. On February 21st, 2017, he visited the National Museum of African American History and Culture. In his memoir, Smithsonian Secretary Lonnie G. Bunch III, then the museum's director, recalled that before the president arrived, aides told Bunch that Trump, quote, was in a foul mood and he did not want to see anything, quote, difficult. Nevertheless, Bunch began the private tour in a gallery about the transatlantic slave trade. It's the African American History Museum. That's how they got here. That's the answer to why you would show it. It was not my job to make the rough edges of history smooth, even for the president, Bunch wrote. In the executive order that features Halligan, 3 D.C. museums are specifically mentioned, along with Lindsey Halligan, Esquire, of course. First, a reference to an infographic about white culture on the African American Museum's website that was removed in 2020, by the way, after Donald Trump Jr. criticized it in a social media post. So that one's taken care of. Check that one off Lindsey's to-do list. The second is the Smithsonian American Women's History Museum, which is whose opening is years down the road, so it doesn't even exist yet. Yet the order claims it will celebrate who? Male athletes participating in women's sports. False, according to the Smithsonian spokeswoman Linda St. Thomas. A third museum is the Smithsonian American Art Museum, which Halligan visited this winter as she was getting to know D.C. An exhibit titled The Shape of Power, Stories of Race and American Sculpture is specified in the executive order as an example of improper ideology. Well, there's at least one that actually exists. Walking through that exhibition, it's easy to see how it would become a flashpoint for the Trump administration. Text accompanying the artworks, which explore the way different races of people sculpt themselves and others, explains that race is not biological and that sculpture has been a powerful tool in promoting scientific racism. In that it could be used to perpetuate harmful stereotypes about bodies of color. I see. During her visits to the museums, Halligan says she saw exhibits that have to do with either another country's history or an art and sculpture that describes on the placards next to it that America and sculpture are inherently racist. Probably not. It's probably that there are certain sculptors who might have been racist. You could talk about that, right? No, I guess not. Anyway, she offered no specific details, but that didn't stop her from crafting an executive order giving her a new job. She says she also saw exhibitions that did not focus on America at all. There's a lot about other countries' history. There's nothing to do with America, and I think, America is so special, she says, adding, we should all be focused on how amazing our country is and how much America has to offer. Why talk about other countries in museums, right? That's crazy. Where did this come from? Our country? No, it came from... Where did it come from? Fine. Our country. It came from the Port of Los Angeles. Come on. Halligan is not alone in the MAGAverse for wanting to change the nation's cultural institutions. The content of the executive order was foreshadowed by a November 25th Wall Street Journal opinion piece co-written by the Heritage Foundation's Mike Gonzalez, one of the contributors to Project 2025, with co-author Armin Tooloe, Tooloee. He laid out a plan for, quote, how Trump can rid Washington of wokeness and retake control of museums was one step. Smithsonian museums have forsaken their mission of spreading knowledge and instead are trying to decolonize society, they wrote. Mr. Trump should ask Congress, why would you do that, to restore ideological balance by appointing real conservatives willing to stand up to progressive views to the Board of Regents of the Smithsonian. So instead, of course, they took the shortcut. Why don't I name somebody to do a thing that I don't have the power to do? And why wouldn't it be that lady I saw at the golf club that time? You remember her? She was wearing a suit? Yeah. How Halligan and the vice president, who is on the Board of Regents, will carry out the executive order remains to be seen. The order is unusual because the Smithsonian's programming is not under the purview of the executive branch, so now we know where that came from. The independent institution receives about 60% of its funding from congressional appropriations and federal grants and contracts, so that means Elon Musk can turn them off, according to fiscal 2023 numbers, but those funds cover operations, infrastructure, and maintaining collections. Generally, exhibitions are funded by private donations. But to hell with that. But the order makes clear that the administration will find a way to punish the museums financially if desired changes are not enacted by prohibiting expenditure on exhibits or programs that degrade shared American values, divide Americans based on race, or promote programs or ideologies inconsistent with federal law and policy. And none of them are doing that. Policy, though? Maybe. Those words have thrown the nation's cultural class into a tailspin. The American Historical Association said the order completely misconstrues the nature of historical work. Well, there's not much wiggle room in that. The Organization of American Historians wrote that the order accuses historians and Smithsonian curators of professional malfeasance. The Congressional Black Caucus Foundation said the order, which promotes the reinstatement of statues and memorials that were removed for, quote, partisan reasons, encourages the veneration of historical figures who committed racist acts. On Thursday, 4 Democratic members of the Committee on House Administration urged Vance to preserve the Smithsonian in a letter, writing that the order is shaped solely by the views and ideology of one individual as a means of expanding his political power. The attempt to paper over elements of American history is both cowardly and unpatriotic. Asked whether Halligan had been in touch with Bunch, the Board of Regents, or any of the directors of the museums, the White House and the Smithsonian declined to answer. That's because the answer is no. She's not really doing work. She's just complaining about things and creating a job for herself. The White House would also not say whether or how Halligan would pursue the removal of any current works of art or wall text in any museums or the cancellation of any upcoming Smithsonian exhibitions. Presumably, it would be prevailing on Elon Musk to turn off the employment records of anybody whom she instructed to take things down and they failed to comply. We will be working with a diverse group of people with varying fields of expertise to make sure that the Smithsonian portrays a fair and balanced representation of American history, culture, and art, says Halligan, who did not answer a follow-up question about how that group would be selected. It's me and Elon Musk, and anybody he assigns to the job of firing people for me. Despite her role in this executive order and apart from her Oval Office appearances, Halligan has mainly stayed out of the spotlight in Washington. She has no social media presence. She doesn't seem to pop up in the background of MAGA party pics. Her only recent playbook sighting was at a British embassy brunch in honor of the Shakespeare Theatre Company. Halligan was not someone we invited, nor on our guest list, says a representative for the company, though she may have been a guest of another guest. I'm more of a private person, as you can probably see, says Halligan, whose influence could soon be very, very public. You know, she makes public appearances in order to get jobs. Stand here in a suit, for instance. I wish it was that easy for everyone else. Anyway, golly, that's really something. I'll give it that. All right. Other things that I might update you with here. Maybe a little information about what's going on with Hegseth, which we only hinted at. And I happened to, this fell on my lap. It came through the good work, the good promotional work of people over at the New Republic on behalf of Greg Sargent, who always does good work. So I was happy to read it. Full-blown meltdown. That's the quote. What's going on? Don Jr. and MAGA rage as GOPers turn on Hegseth. They're mad about this, I guess. And they're doing it online. Let's see what's going on. As the scandals around Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth grow and GOP knives come out for him, a sharp observer of the national security bureaucracy explains why President Trump is caught in a brutal bind. Okay. So we know what the new controversies are. I haven't read the details of his other Signal chat, but Greg and I mentioned it. Greg had read something, told us a little bit about it when it was established, who was on it. Suffice to say, he abused it and needs to be fired post haste. But Don Jr. is angry about it. President Trump's defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, is imploding again. We just learned that he shared still more highly sensitive data on a private Signal chat. A GOP congressman just basically called for his resignation. And a former chief Pentagon official who is a Trump supporter himself also tore into Hegseth's tenure, calling it a full-blown meltdown. That's what Greg read us yesterday, right? That triggered a furious response from Donald Trump Jr., who declared this turncoat critic exiled from the Trump movement. I think you already knew that. Other MAGA figures raged at Hegseth's critics as well. We talked to Juliette Kayyem, a former national security official under Barack Obama. She takes us through this latest scandal and explains why the profoundly unfit Hegseth will become a much, much bigger problem for Trump with no easy way out for the president. You're invited, of course, then to listen to the episode, and there's a transcript provided as well. That, we can't just steal his content and play it on the air, but I will refer you that way so that you can catch up on what MAGA land is feeling about the necessity of firing Hegseth and why that puts Trump in a bind. And it's just basically, I guess, I'm sure a contest between the people who say never apologize, never back down, and others who say this guy is a liability. And he doesn't bring anything to the table. Let's just throw him under the bus already. It's curious, what makes for a good. How long is the episode? How long can you talk about this thing? Is a good question. I don't know. Anyway, let's see. There was a timing involved here. A good 20 minutes of this analysis. Anyway, okay. That doesn't, I guess, really actually add new detail to the story, but it's out there and it's another way to catch up. Let me go head back to Pocket and see. Did I put anything aside on that subject that I could or should share with you, or should I move on to other items? Yeah, that's the story of Hegseth actually having improperly shared all of this information. Here's a way too long piece to read for today. Yeah, there's an awful lot here. Oh, yes. What did I want to bring this one to the forefront? I mentioned just in passing at the end of the show yesterday, I think, that the IRS commissioner, who was commissioner for all of like 2 days the other day, this was, I think we got to the substance of that, which was that the guy had apparently been somehow appointed commissioner by Elon Musk, who has no authority to do this sort of thing. But this was just, improper and paperless delegation of authority, as usual, by Donald Trump. Every time something goes wrong, he keeps saying, "I don't know about that. That's out of my area." Right? Why did you bomb Yemen? Some other person made the decision. Why is this guy the IRS commissioner? I delegated the authority. Why is Abrego Garcia? Why was he grabbed up and shipped out of the country when you knew it was a mistake? I don't handle that. It's true that he's probably asking other people to take care of these things. But of course, like with Trump and paperwork, as usual, he's not doing any of the documentation and not taking the actual steps necessary to make the authority official. And that's not surprising. I grabbed from MSNBC Steve Bannon's Maddow blog entry on the commissioner. Let me give you the details of that background here, and we'll wind up on that story for the day. Amid Trump-imposed chaos, IRS loses its fourth commissioner in 3 months. How short was Gary Shapley's? Is it Shapley or it could be Shapley, I guess, but there's no E in between the P and the L there. So Shapley is what it looks like. How short was Gary Shapley's tenure as IRS commissioner? He's out after less than a week on the job. In recent weeks, Steve tells us, the Internal Revenue Service has lost its chief of staff, its chief financial officer, its top officials overseeing privacy and risk policy, all of which has had a predictably destabilizing effect on the tax agency. And to fully appreciate just how ridiculous conditions have become at the IRS, consider the revolving door in the commissioner's office. The New York Times reported wait a minute, I need my sound effect. The acting commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service is being replaced after Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent complained to President Trump, you know that guy, right, that the latest leader of the agency had been installed without his knowledge and at the behest of billionaire Elon Musk. Mr. Bessent believed that Mr. Musk had done an end run around him to get Gary Shapley installed as the interim head of the IRS, even though the tax collection agency reports to Mr. Bessent. You might have guessed that part. He's the Treasury Secretary. Mr. Musk's department, so-called Department of Government Efficiency, pushed the appointment through White House channels, but Mr. Bessent was not consulted or asked for his blessing, the people said. Not that Trump usually cares about such things. I don't know. What is Elon wants? What could be wrong? He never bothers to find out if there's anything wrong with the person. NBC News confirmed the fact that Shapley has been ousted. The Times report added that the next acting chief is, IRS chief, is expected to be the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, Michael Falkender, which I guess would get Bessent's approval. If that proves to be true, he'll be the fifth person to serve as the IRS's leader in the last 3 months. And it's not busy season or anything. In January, then IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel, who was nominated by Joe Biden, resigned on Inauguration Day. As Trump prepared to replace him, Werfel was followed by Doug O'Donnell, a longtime IRS official who stepped down a month later. O'Donnell was followed by Melanie Krause, who resigned just after 2 months on the job, which was an understandable response to an unprecedented and legally dubious gambit launched by the administration. She was followed by Shapley, a political ally to Trump, who raised concerns about Hunter Biden's taxes. That's how he came to his notice, and who was apparently installed by Musk earlier this week in the president's first term. Anthony Scaramucci famously exited the White House after 11 days as Trump's communications director this week. Shapley's tenure at the IRS ended after just half a Scaramucci. CNBC reported this week that tax attorneys have started to look at the IRS as a zombie agency that struggles to complete its work, and it's not hard to understand why. The problems appear likely to get worse before they get better. The New York Times reported this week that roughly 22,000 IRS employees have signed up for the Trump administration's latest resignation offer, according to 4 people familiar with the matter. So basically, the whole place is going to empty out in a matter of weeks. So we got that. We got all sorts of other news that we didn't get to today. We really need to cover what's going on at the State Department. Apparently, a draft memo of some kind that went out or was obtained by reporters over the weekend appears to detail something that may or may not happen, but essentially ending the foreign service as we know it, and like just firing hundreds, maybe thousands of people in the diplomatic service, reducing embassy and consular staffs overseas to bare bones, eliminating the whole foreign service exam that, actually finds out whether people are competent to these things or not. Essentially, eliminating the professional foreign service and replacing it with more patronage style appointments, which, has always been the case for the prestige postings overseas. But now, what can I tell you? It's going to get that much worse. All right, that plus, is there more word on China tariffs? I got this quick message from my brother Mark, who sent something earlier before the show. I just only saw it now. On Thursday, Donald Trump announced he might end the increase in tariffs imposed on China, which have disrupted global markets. Okay. Well, probably all part of wider reporting on the essential corruption at the heart of all of this, with Trump exempting products from China that his biggest contributors are paying him to exempt, I guess, from the regime. So something else we got to dive into. We'll see whether we revisit that either whether we wait for Friday or whether Greg brings it up Wednesday or Thursday, coming up later this week.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Alrighty, and time to hand things over now to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Following us right here, just keep it tuned here. What has he got on tap for you today? Oh, I don't know. He's probably previewed it and everything, but just never hit the return button. What can I tell you? But when we worry about missing a story, we're always saved by Justice Putnam. So stay tuned.